Hey everybody, welcome to Explorations. My name is Rob. Today we are taking a look at the MSR Habitude 6 6-person tent. In this video, we're going to go over the specifics of the tent, we're going to go over our personal review of it, and we are going to look at the pros and the cons. We are looking at the MSR Habitude 6 6-person tent. So this is a fairly large tent. It has a floor area of 83 square feet. The floor dimensions are 10 feet by 8 feet, maybe a little bit more than 8 feet. The material it is made of is polyester. We have the ripstop polyester for the fly with 1500 millimeters of waterproofing. The floor is also the taffeta polyester with 10,000 millimeters of waterproofing. So pretty decent waterproofing on the floor and the fly. We have aluminum poles and aluminum pegs, and the interior is the nylon micro mesh. When it's all packed up, the tent weighs about 14 pounds, so it's not super heavy, but it's not super light either, so it's probably not the tent you're going to want to bring on a backpacking trip. The tent also has an interior height of 6'5", which is massive. I am 6'5", and this is the only tent I've ever been able to stand up in, so it's not something I've ever seen before, but yeah, 6'5", very tall interior. We also purchased the ground sheet for this tent, sold separately, but if you saw our Killarney paddling videos, you know they are pretty good pieces of equipment to have with you, regardless of what tent you have. So the tent is erected with 6 poles. Each of the sets of poles are connected, so you actually have 3 sets of poles, so it is a relatively simple setup in that regard. The ends of the poles are color coded, so it's very easy to figure out where the poles go when you're assembling the tent. The tent body itself clips into the poles with these plastic hooks, and the ends of the poles slide into these metal toggles at the corner of the tent and the corner of the fly. Again, a very simple setup for such a large tent. So let's go over some of the features of the tent, starting from the front, and we will work our way back. So first off, we have the door. This tent has 1 door and 1 vestibule. The zippers are protected by the rain fly. It's a decent sized vestibule, enough for a little bit of gear. Not the biggest vestibule out there, but it definitely does what we need it to do. It also has these toggles to secure the fly once you have it open. Also at the front, they have something called the porch light, which is just a little LED under the rain fly. It's a little bright out right now to see it work, but it does actually work quite decently. I thought it was a little gimmicky at first when I first saw it, but it turns out it's actually kind of decent. And you'll never lose the light, so if you need a light at night, you know where it is. So moving now down the side of the tent, we see that there are some extra tie downs available, tie down spots. If you're ever camped out in really windy conditions, these will definitely come in handy. And they do provide 2 ropes in order to assist with that tie down operation. However, they do not provide extra pegs, which is a little weird, and it's something that we're seeing more and more now in these new tents. You can see that the fly does a decent job of coming a lot of the way down the tent. There is still a little bit of a gap here, but the waterproofing on the floor, which we'll see later, does come up a decent way. So we were not too concerned about water getting splashed onto the tent from that, or if it does, it going through into the interior of the tent. So you can see the corners of the fly can be cinched down using these toggles here, very handy. Lets you loosen it off in order to put it up or take it down, and then once it's up, you can easily get your fly tightened like that. At the back of the tent, we have our one and only vent. The vent is propped open by the stick, which is removed for storage, and then once your tent is set up, you can prop it out like so. Get a little bit of ventilation under the fly. So let's move on to the interior. So welcome to the interior of the tent. As you can see, I can stand in here. I am 6'5", and the tent height is 6'5", and I can stand in it, which is amazing. On first impressions of the tent, you can see that a majority of the interior is made of the nylon mesh for breathability. And you can see how far up the The floor material comes up the wall, ensuring waterproof. And on the front, not quite as high, obviously because of the door and because the vestibule is there to provide some waterproofing for you. There's also lots of interior tie-down points for clotheslines or for hanging lights or whatever you want to tie to these things. I mean, it's up to you. It's your tent. But yeah, that's a nice option to have. I believe there is a loft storage you can purchase that clips onto here. I haven't personally seen it, so I can't really talk to that, but I believe that is an option you can get for this tent. You also have lots of these little pockets all throughout the tent. Some right at the very front door, which is nice, but every corner has pockets, so there's lots of storage. If you do come out with 6 people, there'll be lots of space for everyone to put all of their junk. At the back of the tent, you can see the vent in the rainfly. We have this mesh triangle here allowing the air to escape and come out through that vent. Looking at the floor, there is plenty of floor space. We've only slept with 4 people in here. I assume 6, it would still be probably a little cramped, especially 6 adults, but for our family of 4, 2 adults and 2 kids, there's tons of space on the floor here. You can sleep either with the tent, the lengthwise, or you can sleep widthwise is also an option. You have that 8-foot width, which is plenty of height in order to sleep and have your gear stored. So all the material in the tent seems pretty well made. The zippers are quite robust. We have really good stitching on all the seams, and the waterproofing on the fly is also seems to be well done. We haven't had any leak issues as of yet. So we've had this tent for just over a year now, and we have used it a lot. Over the summer, we spent about almost 41 days in it, going across the country. All sorts of different conditions, all sorts of different terrain, and it has performed admirably, I'd say. We had a few rain days, including some days with very heavy rain. We never had any problems with leaks or water coming through any of the seams. We were a little concerned with the height of the fly above the ground, but as I mentioned earlier, it seems to not be an issue. Even when you do get a little bit of splashing of mud or what have you on the wall of the tent itself, it doesn't come through because of that thick waterproofing. The tent can be put up with 1 person. However, we do find that it is a little difficult, mostly because of the way the poles connect to the fly. They come out of here very, very easily, or the poles connect to the tent, I should say. They do tend to pop out of these very easily when you're setting it up, so it's much easier if you have 2 people, but it is possible to do it with 1. We haven't had any issues with any other parts of the tent either. The zippers and everything work well. The material is well made. The fly doesn't tend to catch in the zipper when you open and close, which is nice. On the inside, we were a little concerned with the amount of mesh. We thought maybe there might be a lot of air movement through the tent, especially on windy days. We haven't found that. The tent makes it nice and breathable, especially in the hotter months where you want a little bit more air movement. We didn't find it cold using it in the fall either. This time of year, it seemed to be fine. So we were, like I said, concerned about the amount of mesh, but it's fine. We also really like the way the tent is constructed with these side poles pulling the walls of the tent out, kind of making it more of a balloon shape rather than a traditional dome or like A-frame style. It gives you a lot more space to walk around and work with inside the tent. So why don't we go over some of the pros and cons of the Habitude 6, starting with the pros. So the first and most obvious pro is that it's a big tent. If you are in the market for a big tent, this is a big tent. Not just because it's a 6-person tent, but also because of the way it's constructed. As I mentioned, the poles on the wall poles pull those walls way out, giving more of a balloon shape and giving you a much more usable space inside. We also like the vestibule. As I said, it's not the largest vestibule on the market, but it is large enough. You can set up a chair in there, you can sit in there, you can put your equipment in there. If you're wet or dirty or muddy, there is space to move around in that vestibule. The tent is well made, good quality material, good quality poles. The pegs seem decent, and that is the quality that you tend to get with MSR. Of course, there is a price tag associated with that quality, but in terms of material and robustness of the tent overall, we are very happy with it. It seems quite robust. We used it, we've set it up and taken it down probably about 40 times now, all different conditions, all sorts of different terrain. We've set it up on gravel pads, never had any issues with gravel putting holes in it. Never had any issues, as I said, with rain coming through any of the seams or coming through the fly. We haven't had any zippers go on us. Overall, it's just a very well-made tent. We also really enjoy all the pocket space inside. As we said, I think there's, what do we count, 11 pockets inside. So for us with our kids, or if you're with a larger group of people, there's lots of space inside the tent for you to put all your stuff. We also like the quality of the pegs. They are well made. They are the good hook design that we like a lot. And they are red, which is important. If you lose them in the leaves, they are easy to find. The tent is also relatively easy to put up and take down for such a large tent. You can definitely set it up with one person. It is a little more difficult. 2 people is ideal, but it can be done with one. The tent body connects to the poles with the hooks as opposed to having to slide them through the sleeves. I find the sleeves a little bit fiddly. I mean, that may be more of a personal preference, but I prefer the hook style as opposed to the sleeve style for this type of tent. Another pro of this tent is, conveniently, the instructions are provided for you on the inside of the carry bag. So if you forget how to set it up, or if you're just learning how to set it up, instructions are right here, and they're waterproof. So on to the cons, starting with the vestibule and the door. For some reason, this tent only has the one door. I don't think I've ever been in a tent with only one door before. I don't know the reasoning behind it, but I personally prefer to have a tent with 2 doors, especially a large tent where you have lots of people coming in and out sometimes. It's nice to have that extra access point. The other con, which we are seeing not just with MSR, but with all of these new tents, is they don't seem to provide enough pegs. I don't know what the reasoning is with that, if there's cutting costs or what the deal is. It's across all brands of tents. They gave us these extra tie-down ropes, but there is no peg to peg these ropes out with. I don't know the reasoning for that. Like I said, it is a little annoying, especially when you are paying as much money as we did for this tent. This is a higher quality tent. It wasn't cheap. You think they could throw in a couple extra poles. You think they could throw in a couple extra pegs. And now for the biggest con, at least from our perspective, the largest con of this tent is the ventilation. We have this one vent here at the back, and we have this relatively high fly to allow a little bit of airflow underneath the rain fly. But we found that it's not enough airflow. This tent needs to have a few more vents, or at least a different style vent, maybe on the side, maybe a larger vent. I don't know what the answer is, but there is not enough airflow in the tent. We found when we were camping this summer that when we get up in the morning, the underside of the rain fly would be absolutely soaked just from our breath over the night. Soaked to the point where we had to string up a line and hang it before we packed the tent up for the day. It wasn't to the point where it was dripping on us, but it definitely was wet enough that we did not want to pack it up in that state. And it was wet enough that we actually got to the point where we were sleeping with the fly off as much as we could in nice weather, just so we weren't getting all that condensation buildup on the fly itself. And you get a nice view of the stars at night when the fly is off. Unless you're in the Arctic, of course, that doesn't work so well. But yeah, that is, I think, the biggest con of this tent, and in our opinion, is not enough air movement, not enough breathability. So there you have it. That is the MSR Habitude 6 tent. This is our tent. We like it. We like it a lot. I don't think we have any real complaints with it other than that ventilation issue we mentioned in the cons list. We have used it a bunch, and we hope to use it a bunch more. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give us a like and subscribe. It helps us out a lot. We will see you next time.